In the midst of an instant, a miracle happened and broke the voice of science. A princess was born. She received the calling to be consistently resilient, to rewrite the generational story that was torn, to fight in defiance. The princess was born. She breathed for her first time, cried for her first time. She was as tiny as a corn, and that year was all about her first times. But can you tell me, how does it shift from the purity of a baby to the insanity of impurity? How can it be? Fast forward the clock, comparison became her companion, whispering it was the right dog, dragging her towards a bad flock. He was singing an orchestra of rhyme, acting like it was the prime. Comparison is, by definition, a bad guy, but also a bad guide. Here it comes, her first time on drugs, waiting on her like a massive rock. She was definitely in a bad flock, messing up her spine, messing up her mind. The princess was invaded by slugs. The normality of dependency became the abnormality of apathy, a mix of fancy philosophy. Even though she was raised in an amazing family, the darkness imprisoned her, but the Prince of Peace found her. His whisper followed her and never stopped fighting for her. He went through storms and thunders to deliver her. For 16 years she was lost in fears, but the prince spoke. He removed her yoke and she bursted into tears. She finally finds joy in her salvation while he puts promises into action. The princess' heart started to change. All her world started to feel strange. The old is new. Her chains are now unbound. Her God is kind, and that for sure she knew. From death to life, and life to death. The new path she chose did not allow any pause. Twisted patterns forced their way in. Addiction started to take shape within. Her survival was God's new cause. Her fight were life's against death, and toxic comes in. Death has its first win, with amphetamines leading her to self-destruction and depression. The princess' mind was slowly transformed. New door open for confusion, leading to same-sex attraction. The thought creeped in. They busted in, making her heart their home, leading her hands on her tongue, pushing her deeper and deeper into sin. The princess' faith was unstable. A doubt was telling her, "You're unable." How her heavy soul was mixed with emotion. Here comes the path of condemnation. Accusers throwing stones, a batch of rotten bones. The princess cried for help, but only found a plate of unwise comments, a spoon full of unwise judgments. The princess was trapped between two identities, trying to escape from these entities, suffocating underwater, crying for help, but yet lost in a forest of kelp. She left the church battered, but her God never forgot how he favored. The princess was wandering, but God was still hovering. Years passed by, in a wheel running like a hamster, living a life of her own passion, raised in a different dimension. She followed another master, hypnotized by lies. She walked with girlfriends, pretending to be allies. Again, she was enchained in regrets. She was like strings without fret. Songs from hell were screwing up her faith, creating for her a new faith of self-hate. But who has the last word? Who separated bones and marrows with his sword? And then she remembers the path that he covers. God's power to rewrite over the curse. He drove her from life in a hospital to life in hospitality, from deep anxiety to profound piety, and from confusion to conviction, from shame to finding her new aim. Joy is now her new name. Joy is my new name. And if you're trapped in this prison where the mirror and reflection is trying to eat you alive because of same-sex attraction, don't worry about what people say about you. Don't worry about how people look at you or what they think of you. They know nothing about what you're going through. They couldn't bear for 1 second what you've been through. They would be dead by now, crying and begging for their life. You only know how the grace of God kept you. Those who can understand are those who once wore those pants. Believers may be kind, they may seem fine, but they know nothing about what to say. Judges write down with ink all these fancy speech to teach, thinking they got it all right, convinced that what they say is right and preaching out without asking God what he feels like. That's what I used to think. Until I heard about Jackie Perry, until I met Christian friends that could understand, care and be there for me, until I saw God changing me, lifting me up and allowing me to stand again and ride on the next ferry destined to go to freedom land and learn more about God's Lamb. I was born to conquer. And so were you.